You've probably heard of the Mahabharata, right? That massive epic about a huge war. But what if I told you the story of why it was even told in the first place is just as wild? And it all kicks off not with a battle, but with this absolutely horrifying act of revenge. So let's set the scene. Our story really gets going with this king. His name is Janamejaya. And yeah, he's the great-grandson of the legendary hero Arjuna, so he's got this big kingdom, but he's also inherited something else, a grudge, a really big one. And it's going to push him to do something, well, something on an absolutely unimaginable scale. Okay, so picture this. It's a truly dramatic scene. King Janamejaya has kicked off this massive ritual. It's called the Sarpa Sattra, and it has one single terrifying purpose: to wipe out every single snake on the entire planet. You've got priests chanting these magical hymns, this massive fire is just blazing, and it's literally pulling snakes out of the ground and throwing them into the flames. The air is just filled with their cries. It's intense. So you have to ask, right? Why? Why would a king order a mindless massacre of an entire species? I mean, what could possibly drive someone to that kind of extreme, all-consuming vengeance? Well, to get the answer, we've got to look at the king's father. So here's what happened. Not too long before all this, Janamajaya's dad, King Parikshit, he's out hunting. He gets thirsty, stumbles upon a sage who's deep in meditation, and asks for some water. But the sage is, meditating, so he doesn't respond. The king gets super annoyed and, in a moment of pure disrespect, he drapes a dead snake around the sage's neck. And that one little act, well, it's what kicks off this whole terrible tragedy.
Well, the sage's student saw what the king did, and he was not having it. He curses Parikshit to die from a snakebite within 7 days. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. The great serpent king, Takshaka, shows up and fulfills the curse, killing Parikshit. For his son, Janamejaya, this isn't just a tragedy, it's an unforgivable crime. And all that grief, it just twists and turns into this furious, all-out desire for revenge, not just against Takshaka, but against all snakes.
Okay, so the sacrifice is hitting its peak. Snakes are pouring into the fire. And then right at that moment, someone totally unexpected shows up. And this guy, he's about to challenge the king's entire worldview. He's going to completely shift this story from being about simple revenge to being about some seriously profound philosophy. The guy's name is Astika, and what's so cool about him is his background. His mom was a Naga, a serpent, and his dad was a human sage. So he literally belongs to both worlds. Which means he's not taking sides here. He storms in and just shouts for the king to stop this whole thing, calling it a dharma, basically an act that goes against all natural and moral order. Of course Janamejaya pushes back. He's like, this is justice for my father. But Astika hits him with this incredible question. He points out that, hey, the serpent Takshaka, he also thought he was getting justice for an old wrong. And think about it. What about all the orphans this king's fire is creating? You don't think they're going to grow up and want their own justice? See, it's not a straight line. It's an unending spiral of revenge, where everyone thinks they're the good guy. And this is the absolute crux of it all. Astika explains that the whole point of the Great War, the Mahabharata, it wasn't really about justice. It was about something much bigger, dharma. And dharma isn't just about, getting even. It's about conquering ourselves, our own worst impulses, like rage and that burning need for vengeance. It's about choosing wisdom and empathy instead of just hitting back. And that is a lesson King Janamejaya has clearly, completely forgotten. So what's Astika's plan to get this through to the king? How do you teach him this huge lesson? Well, it's not by arguing with him. It's by telling him a story. A really, really great story, one that was specifically designed to teach this exact kind of wisdom. He tells the king, look, you need to summon the sage Vaisampayana. Now, Vaisampayana was a student of the legendary Vyasa. And Vyasa, he's the one who felt this deep, inexplicable urge to write a story that could explain the deepest truths of the world to absolutely everyone. And guess what that story is about? It's the story of Janamejaya's own family, his ancestors. Now, to make sure this story was totally pure, Vyasa got some serious help. He enlisted the elephant-headed god Ganesha to be his scribe. But they both had conditions. Vyasa's deal was, I'm going to narrate without a single pause, so the story would just flow out, completely unfiltered by any human bias. And Ganesha's condition? He said, I'll only write down the parts that actually make sense to me. This basically ensures the whole tale is stamped with divine wisdom. But here's a really important thing to understand. This epic wasn't just, like, written down once and then stuck in a vault. No way. It was a living, breathing story. It grew, it changed, it evolved as it was passed down from one generation to the next.
So it started out as a much smaller tale. Vyasa's original story was called Jaya, which just means victory. It was the core story of a huge battle. But then, as other people retold it, it got bigger. It expanded into the Bharata, which became the story of the whole Bharata clan. And then, finally, over generations, people added philosophy, history, genealogy, the whole shebang. And that's how it grew into the Mahabharata, the great epic. It's kind of like a tiny seed growing into this massive, sprawling banyan tree with roots and branches everywhere.
And this just shows you what an incredible journey this epic has had. It wasn't just told once and that was it. I mean, Vyasa told it to his students, right? Including by Sampayana, the guy who's about to tell it to our King Janamejaya. But it was also told by other people, to completely different audiences, to sages in a forest, even to 4 mythical birds who had actually seen the great battle. And every single time it was told, it wasn't just a repeat. It was a reinterpretation, adding all these new layers and new perspectives to the story. And the results of all that growing and retelling, I mean, it's just a truly monumental piece of work. We're talking over 100,000 verses. To put that in perspective, that makes the Mahabharata one of the longest epic poems ever written. It's longer than the ancient Greek epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, combined. Which brings us right back to where we started, back to King Janamejaya. He's sitting there in his sacrificial hall, the fire is still raging, and the lives of thousands and thousands of serpents are hanging in the balance. And he's about to hear a story that just might change everything. So just as the storyteller is getting ready to begin, Astika gives the king one last piece of advice. He says, listen to the tale carefully. Don't get distracted by all the plots and the action. The real prize here, the king's true inheritance, isn't his kingdom, and it isn't the thrilling story itself. It's the river of wisdom that flows right through the middle of it all.
And so, as the very first words of the Mahabharata are spoken to this king, who's just consumed by revenge, we're left with the same question he must have been asking himself. Can a story, just a story, no matter how epic it is, really be powerful enough to stop a massacre, to break an endless cycle of revenge, and actually teach a king the true meaning of Dharma? Well, that profound possibility, that's what lies at the very heart of this epic.